On one night in 1940, London realized the war was no longer overseas. For 8 months, civilians, not soldiers, were the front line. This is not a story of victory. It is a story of survival. On the evening of September 7th, 1940, Londoners looked up and realized the war had finally found them. As dusk settled over the Thames, the sound came first, low, distant, mechanical. German bombers crossed the channel in waves, their silhouettes cutting through fading light. At 4:43 p.m., the first bomb struck the East End docks, igniting warehouses packed with fuel and grain. Flames rose so high they were visible for miles. This was no accidental raid. It was deliberate, calculated, and merciless. The Luftwaffe had shifted its focus from airfields to civilians. Hitler believed Britain could be broken not by invasion, but by terror. Over 430 civilians died that night alone. Families fled into streets glowing red from firestorms. Others descended into underground stations, clutching blankets, children, and prayers. Firefighters battled infernos with failing water pressure as bombs shattered mains beneath their feet. Hospitals overflowed. Churches collapsed. The sky pulsed orange, then black, then orange again. London did not sleep. It waited, listening for engines, counting seconds between explosions, knowing this was only the beginning. As fires still burned at dawn, the bombers turned back, already planning to return the next night. What began as a single night became 57 consecutive nights of bombing. From September 1940 to May 1941, London lived under constant threat. Air raid sirens dictated time. Nights were spent underground. Days were spent clearing rubble. Over 40,000 civilians across Britain would die before it ended, many while asleep. Families claimed spaces on underground platforms like property. Chalk marks appeared on walls. Children learned silence faster than speech. The government encouraged calm, but fear seeped everywhere, into bread lines, factories, and bombed out streets. Bombs did not choose targets. Homes vanished without warning. Entire streets disappeared overnight. Rescue workers dug with bare hands, listening for voices beneath collapsed brick. Sometimes they heard nothing. Sometimes they heard singing. Yet trains still ran. Newspapers printed. Shops reopened beside ruins. This defiance was not loud. It was exhausted, stubborn, and human. But each sunset carried the same question. Would this be the night everything ended? Then, one night in December, the fire became so intense that even the Thames seemed to burn out. On December 29th, 1940, history repeated itself in flames. That night, over 130,000 incendiary bombs rained down on the city. The old heart of London burned. Guildhall, churches designed by Christopher Wren, centuries of memory reduced to ash. St. Paul's Cathedral stood surrounded by fire, its dome emerging through smoke like a ghost of endurance. Photographs from that night would circle the world. But behind them were men collapsing from heat, women forming bucket chains, and volunteers refusing to leave their posts even as roofs collapsed above them. Firestorms consumed oxygen. Some shelters became tombs. The city glowed so brightly that pilots claimed they could see London from the Dutch coast. By morning, entire districts were gone. But the bombs did not stop with London, and the next target would suffer even worse. That on November 14th, 1940, Coventry vanished in a single night. The Luftwaffe unleashed Operation Moonlight Sonata, using Pathfinder flares to guide bombers with terrifying precision. For 11 continuous hours, the city was bombed without pause. Over 500 civilians were killed. The medieval cathedral was left roofless, its walls standing like a wound that would never heal. Survivors emerged to a city without landmarks. Streets were unrecognizable. Familiar bells were silent. The word Coventry entered the German vocabulary, meaning total destruction. Britain understood then, this was not punishment. It was annihilation by design. And as winter tightened its grip, the bombers returned to London with renewed fury. The youngest victims learned fear before they learned history. Children slept beside strangers in underground stations. Some were evacuated. Many returned, unable to bear separation. Teachers became wardens. Mothers learned to tell the difference between falling bombs and distant guns. Psychological scars ran deep. Night terrors, silence, sudden screams at harmless noises. Yet children also played among ruins, turning devastation into imagined worlds, because imagination was the only escape left. The war was shaping a generation in darkness. But even as bombs fell, a battle was being fought high above the city. While civilians hid below, pilots fought alone in the cold, thin air. The Royal Air Force, outnumbered and exhausted, scrambled nightly. Many pilots were barely 20. They flew multiple sorties, knowing a single mistake meant death. Losses were heavy. Faces vanished from mess halls overnight. Radar gave Britain a fragile edge, but courage carried the rest. As Winston Churchill would later say, never was so much owed by so many to so few. Yet for every enemy plane destroyed, bombs still fell. And in February 1941, the attacks grew even deadlier. Not all bombs exploded. Delayed action bombs lay hidden beneath streets and homes, detonating hours or days later. Rescue workers feared the ground itself. Each step could be the last. Unexploded ordnance still lies beneath London today. Fear became constant, unseen, inescapable. Then, in April, the docks were targeted again, with catastrophic results that London's lifeline became its weakness. The docks burned repeatedly. Oil slicks ignited. Supply lines shattered. Food grew scarce. Yet convoys kept arriving. Workers returned even as bombs fell around them. Britain endured, not because it was unafraid, but because surrender felt worse. But the cost was rising, and the nation was nearing exhaustion. The last great attack came without warning. On 10 to 11 May 1941, over 700 tons of bombs fell on London in a single night. The House of Commons was hit. Hospitals burned. Over 1,400 people died. It was the deadliest night of the Blitz. And then, suddenly, the bombers stopped coming. Silence can be louder than explosions. In June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. London was no longer the priority. Streets emerged into daylight, broken but alive. Over 1 million homes were damaged or destroyed. Tens of thousands were dead. But Britain stood. Yet survival left questions that would never fade. Victory did not erase the nightmares. Trauma lingered. Families mourned quietly. Children grew up too fast. Courage had a price, paid long after the sirens ended. The Blitz became legend, but legends often hide pain. And the final truth is the hardest to face. The Blitz did not destroy London, but marked it forever. The city rebuilt. Scars vanished from streets, but not from memory. The courage of ordinary people became history's quiet backbone. No monuments can measure what was endured in those nights underground. The bombs stopped falling, but for those who lived through the Blitz, the war never truly ended. What would you have done when the sirens sounded? History remembers battles, but not always the people beneath them. The fires stopped, but the memories never did.